We are the Non-Prophets. Do I get volume?
Yes.
I'm your host, Jeff D. My co-host is Vic Farrow.
You totally blew my cool opening.
Oh, come on, man. How was I supposed to know?
We told you in advance.
We were cutting it really close that time with the entire opening music that this time was so short that it was over before it faded out. Where am I? No, it's all screwed up. Our producer...
I'm Russell Glasser.
Russell Glasser, there he is over there. Today's opening music, that little tiny short song, was Jumping in Gomorrah by XTC. We are live August 16, 2003. Right?
That's the day.
Now, does everybody remember this new schedule we've been talking about for the last several episodes, that we were going to go first, third, and fifth Saturdays?
Well, forget it.
Yeah, forget that.
I remember something like that.
Forget that. We're changing it on you again, folks.
Yes, because we really want to confuse you. It's a part of our plan.
Well, it turns out Vic here has a responsibility which keeps him from being able to do the show every other week. And so, because we had the first, third, and fifth Saturdays, starting next month, we were going to be out of sync with Vic here. Yep. And that could not be allowed. So
I'm so important to this show, we have to alter the schedule.
Yeah, well, let's wake up.
Yep.
So what we're going to do is, as of now and for the foreseeable future, it's going to be every other Saturday.
Fancy that.
No matter what, every other Saturday.
The next few episodes, the dates of the next few episodes will always be available on the website.
Which website is that? Is that the ACA website?
Yeah,
or the
atheist-community.org/radio.htm.
Right, that's our local
schedule.
Austin, Texas atheist site rather than the Atheist Network site. Presumably the Atheist Network site always lists us. Are we like repeats?
When we don't play, then it just replays our previous show.
Right. Okay. Well, so that should all be very clear now. And one of the reasons we switched to the other schedule was because we have periodic technical problems and things that prevent us from going out at all. And
not so much lately.
Well, not so much lately. So we're probably safe going back. But what we used to do is we said every other Saturday, but then if we screwed up somehow and missed a Saturday, we'd just go ahead and broadcast the following Saturday, breaking the whole every other Saturday thing.
Right.
We're not doing that. We're not going to break the every other Saturday thing. It's going to be every other Saturday. We got anybody in that chat room?
Figure that out. Yeah, we have two people.
Hi, folks. I see three.
Hi, Rostaman and Terrelin.
Hey.
And Sleeping Dragon, welcome.
Folks in the chat room.
Sleeping Dragon.
Thanks for joining us.
Clever.
And just to remind everybody out there whoever hears this show, if you go to the atheistnetwork.com website while we are broadcasting live, which we do every other Saturday from 2 to 3:30 Central Time, and click on the chat link, you'll find yourself in the neat little chat room with other listeners that are listening live, and you can yak about what we're talking about, and we monitor that chat room. And
last week I dropped in on the chat room, and there was this poor guy who was all alone because he thought we were live when we weren't.
See, that's the scheduling thing.
Yeah.
That poor man. We did that to him. Us. It's our fault.
I never met the guy. I don't know what you're talking
about. Didn't we hit a record last week? Last episode, not last week. 2 weeks ago, last live episode of 20 warm bodies in the chat room?
Yes, that is correct.
Therefore, I want to see 21 this week.
Ooh.
Okay, 21 people in the chat room.
Get online.
If you're listening live,
get in there.
If we don't have 21 people, it's filling up. Check it out. If we don't have 21 in there, then we can't have beer.
You can forget that idea.
All right. So,
I'm going to have beer. I'm going to have beer anyway, whether we have 21 or 2.
21 to have beer most places.
Okay, I get it. All right.
Slurs, defamation, and discrimination against atheists or other non-believers in the U.S. media. Right? If you run across any of that,
smack them down hard.
Send an email to ombuds@atheism.org. Tell them what you heard, where and when you heard it, who said it, and all them exactly what they said, all the neat details. And the ombuds will forward that info to local participating non-theist groups who will issue press releases and slap them around.
There you go.
You can collect past episodes of The Non-Prophets and an audio version of our sister show, The Atheist Experience, which airs only on public access television in Austin, Texas, in a convenient CD format. Each CD includes a full month's worth of audio from both shows in both QuickTime and MP3 format, plus extra surprises. The CDs are $5 each. Email atheist@mac.com for info.
Cool.
We've been mentioning this Free Thought film production, Heart of the Beholder. These guys sent out emails soliciting contributions to help make their movie happen, and last I heard they were nowhere near their goal. They need your help. To find out more about the film Heart of the Beholder, based on a true story, and how to support that effort, go to www.beholder.com.
And their time's running out. They had a time frame set for this, and it's coming up real soon.
Yeah.
And if they don't reach the goal, they're going to have to return all the money, and this project will not get made.
And that would suck.
Yes, it would.
That would suck. It seems like a really cool idea. Okay, so, on to the news. The Vatican's sticking its big fat nose into everybody's business. Everybody been watching and following this?
Prone to do.
Everybody been watching, following this?
Oh gosh, I expected them to stop doing that.
But I mean, there's a specific thing they've done lately, which is this directive they issued to Catholic politicians around the globe to oppose efforts to legalize gay marriage. And they are suffering this big honking backlash from it, which I completely love. The moral authority of the Catholic Church is apparently, if not completely gone, then like seriously teetering.
Right. Well, pedophile priest didn't help them much.
No, it didn't.
No. It's kind of hard to take someone serious who's been covering up pedophile priests.
You'd think, yeah. So here's the evidence that it's hard to take them seriously. From Ireland. Clergy and bishops who distribute the Vatican's latest publication describing homosexual activity as evil could face prosecution under incitement to hatred legislation.
Ooh.
The Irish Council for Civil Liberties, ICCL, has warned that the language in the 12-page booklet is so strong it could be interpreted as being in breach of the Act. Published by the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith, the booklet states that Catholics have a duty to oppose the indoctrination and operation of legislation recognizing same-sex unions. It identifies politicians as having a duty to vote against any such moves.
That's funny. I thought they had a duty to their electorate.
Interesting, huh? I mean, there was
all this time I was so wrong.
There was a day when your value as a human being was measured by how much you toed the line of your religion.
Yeah.
We are seeing the end of those days. According to the document, Catholic teaching states that homosexuality is objectively disordered. Quote, those who would move from tolerance to the legitimization of specific rights for cohabiting homosexual persons need to be reminded that the approval or legislation of evil is something far different from the toleration of evil, unquote. It also claims that allowing children to be adopted into same-sex unions would mean, quote, doing violence to those children, unquote.
Oh, really?
Ms. Aisling Reedy, director of the ICCL, warned that the statement could be in violation of the 1989 Incitement to Hatred Act. Those convicted under the Act can face jail terms of up to 6 months. Under the Act, literature which is threatening, abusive, or insulting, linked with the intent to stirring up hatred, is illegal. I love that one.
Doing things illegal doesn't really come foreign to the Catholic Church, does it?
Yeah. But those are man's laws.
Oh, yes, right. They're not subject to those.
Right.
But this, I mean, our world so needs this kind of stuff. You know, calling the religious organizations to task for stirring up hatred with their dogma. It's wonderful. You have no comment, Russ?
No.
He's sitting there hanging his head like you're sad. What's wrong? Poor Catholic Church. The poor old Pope sitting in his big golden throne, weeping openly. They won't listen to me.
I'm not paying attention to your news, okay?
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Are you all caught up now?
Yes.
From the U.S., In response to the Vatican's call this week for politicians of all religious denominations to enact stricter laws against same-sex marriage, Democratic presidential candidate Senator John Kerry reaffirmed his belief in the separation of church and state.
Yay! Golf clap, golf clap.
On Friday, this is an August 2nd article, so I'm not sure which Friday we're talking about. He scolded the Vatican for saying Catholic politicians like himself have a moral duty to oppose laws granting legal rights to gay couples.
I don't care if he's Catholic or not. All politicians have a duty.
But not to do what the church says.
Well,
That's what the pamphlet said, that he had a duty to oppose the legislation.
Oh, sorry.
You aren't following, are you?
God damn it.
Why don't you just play in your little chat room over there?
Hi, chat
Folks in
room
the chat room, you keep Russell busy. He's not paying attention to the news and confusing things. Like, I don't know where I am. Oh, here we go. Quote, I believe in the church and I care about it enormously, but I think that it's important to not have the church instructing politicians. That is an inappropriate crossing of the line in America.
Amen.
Irony, irony, irony.
Yeah, I think that meter's going to break.
And just one more. I mean, there was a lot of this stuff, and I just grabbed the funnest ones, I thought. Yeah. But there has been an outcry and backlash all over the place. Several news stories coming out of Canada. Canada is really pissed off at the Vatican for this. From Australia, Catholic politicians have responded to a papal directive to vote against any new legislation that recognizes gay unions by telling the church to mind its own business.
There you go.
Prominent Catholic MPs, including the Labour's Laurie Brereton and Liberal Christopher Pine, have responded to the Church's cry to repeal any gay marriage laws by reminding the Vatican to stay out of government matters. Quote, MPs should decide issues strictly on their merits. The separation of church and state is fundamental to our system, Mr. Brereton said. On their merits. How's that? I love that, right? Merits. Yeah. Not what some ancient book decreed, but you look at it, you look at the situation, you think about it, and does it make sense or does it make sense? Will it hurt anybody or will it not hurt anybody? Right? That seems a good basis. A spokesman for gay Catholic group Rainbow Sash, Michael Kelly, expressed alarm at the impacts the document might have on politicians, particularly in South Africa, Asia, and South America, Asia, and Africa. Quote, attempting to interfere in this way in democratic processes is outrageous, and it shows the Vatican has yet to come to terms with modern pluralistic societies and the rights of all citizens under the law.
And they never will.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, when it gets to the point where, in order to survive, they have to embrace the modern pluralistic ideals, they'll do that.
And at that point, they'll pretend that it's never been any other way.
Yeah. Right. It'll take them 500 years to apologize for this little pamphlet.
No, Galileo only took 300.
Okay, 300 years. But, you know... Yeah,
what I want to hear is a politician tell the Catholic Church to bite me. That would impress.
No, they would do that.
No, it's like the Catholic Church telling me what to do. Bite me.
Yeah. There. But of course, we're not at that time yet when the churches have given up and just decided to adapt themselves to advances in ethics. We're not there yet, are we?
Well, no, it's a gradual process. I mean, they just lag behind.
Right. The point we're at now,
the church, for instance, the church does not still support slavery. It used to.
Right.
Right.
The church is slow to adapt to cultural changes, but long after the rest of us have, they eventually have to.
Plus, let's be fair. I mean, there are when people say liberal Christianity, what they mean is Christianity that has accommodated itself to actual advances in the understanding of basic human rights and human civility and human decency.
Right, because that's what liberal means, guys.
Right. But the rest of them are all still trying to change our culture back to match the way that they used to do things, aren't they?
Yeah, and our latest...
Stone them!
Our latest attacks have come from fundamentalist Christians and nitwits who are... Because in Texas we have the textbook reviews going on right now, and right now they're doing biology textbooks, and that's a firestorm unto itself. And the anti-evolution campaigns is from this story from the Network News, which is a newsletter of the Texas Freedom Network, which is a watchdog group here in Texas watching the religious right. The anti-evolution campaigns are a national trend, with recent battles in Sacramento, California, Cobb County, Georgia, Kansas, and Minnesota. But the stakes are higher in Texas because our centralized review processes impacts not only our whole state of Texas, but also dozens of other states, and because Texas buys such a large volume of textbooks that other states will just buy whatever we pick because publishers don't want to publish that many different versions of
By the way, I have decided to testify at the textbook hearing. Thank you.
More golf cupping. The would-be censors are creationists who, over the course of the last 2 decades, have adopted their tactics and messages to push what they now call intelligent design.
Yeah.
Intelligent design argues that the complexities of life cannot be adequately explained by evolution, and therefore must be the design of a higher power. Now, can anybody tell me what the logical fallacy of that argument is?
I know, but I told you before the show.
Stop blowing it. You're out. Get out.
All right. Fine, I'm turning off my computer and going home. Shit, I am home.
Yeah, okay. Leading the movement...
Wait, let's just talk about this excluded middle thing. Right? What precisely do you mean?
Well, okay. They're saying that because they think that evolution doesn't explain, and what they mean when they say this is that it doesn't explain every single detail of evolution, therefore it's not true and it's all designed by a creator.
Right.
It's an is-or thing. It's either their way or this wrong way. You know?
Right.
And we got the wrong logical fallacy, but there is one there. And,
isn't that it?
I think that's it, yes.
I'm pretty sure.
So the error is that they're pretending that it's a choice between just those two. Either evolution exactly as it is understood at this precise moment, or creationism as the Bible says.
Yes, and intelligent design is nothing more than creationism dressed up in a nice suit.
We're not suggesting, though, that there's some third thing, like space aliens seeded our planet with genetic material.
Yeah, or the creation myths of the others where, like, one god raped this other god and then the earth fell out of her mouth or something like that.
The reason why this is an error is that evolution doesn't remain one static monolithic viewpoint.
No,
that is unchanging. I mean they'll play that both ways. They'll say because it changes, it's weak and therefore vulnerable. But they'll also play because it changes, we'll pretend it doesn't change so that we can play this excluded middle fallacy where you have to pick one or the other. Well, that you don't just. It would take a pretty dumb person, or somebody pretty ignorant of science, to just say that we know everything about evolution now, and therefore nothing that any scientists come up later to add to fill in additional details is valid. No. The science doesn't work that way.
And they're not claiming to have every single detail. In fact, there are details of the mechanisms of evolution that are disputed amongst scientists. But the Discovery Institute and intelligent design proponents want to twist that into saying that, because there's this dispute over these mechanisms, they're trying to say that the dispute is over whether there is evolution or not evolution.
Right.
And that's not even a question in science. They're not arguing about whether there was evolution. Yes, there was. They're arguing over details of the mechanisms.
Right. So the bit that's being excluded from the middle is future science.
Yes. There's some answers. There are open questions regarding the biological evolution. And you can ask any scientist in the field to tell you, there's open questions. Uh-huh. But that does not constitute a major wave of scientists who are disputing evolution as a whole. This isn't happening. But that's what the Discovery Institute and the intelligent design people want you to believe. And they do this by running around, picking and choosing sentences out of scientific journals that can be twisted into seeming like that's what their scientists are saying.
Right.
But sometimes it comes back to bite them in the butt. Because John G. West, who's with the Discovery Institute, had a guest column in the San Angelo paper and quoted a scientist named Sean Carroll, who's an investigator of the Howard Hughes Medical Institute, a professor of molecular biology and genetics at the University of Wisconsin in Madison. He quoted West quoted some of Carroll's work, but Carroll wrote a letter to the paper and says, well, John G. West of the Discovery Institute, in his guest column, quoted an article in a leading biological journal as purported support for his view that alternatives to contemporary evolution science ought to be presented in biology textbooks. I, Carroll, am the author of the article he quoted, but did not properly cite. And I'm writing to make it absolutely clear that West is gravely mistaken in taking the excerpted sentence out of full context. It is very misleading of West to try to derive legitimacy for his mission by scouring the scientific literature for a phrase or a sentence and then attaching a meaning that was not intended and would be far different if read in the entirety of the work or related work by the same author. The intent of West and the Discovery Institute is to recast legitimate scientific inquiry into the causes and mechanisms of evolution as doubt about the process of evolution.
You know, next time you see one of those lists produced by places like the Discovery Institute saying 100 scientists all agree with this statement and therefore we're right about intelligent design, take a close look at what the 100 scientists have actually agreed to, because more often than not it has absolutely nothing to do with saying, yeah, we think intelligent design is the right thing.
No, it's looking, like I said, scouring the literature for a sentence or two that they can take out of context and mean something that it doesn't.
One might immediately react to the claims of the intelligent design folks by turning around and saying, well, there's open questions in science. Like there aren't open questions in intelligent design. For example, which design are you talking about? Right? And they don't mind if people do that, because that's missing the point.
Right.
It's not that, they claim, of course, that ultimately they will claim that their point of view is more certain than the scientific point of view, because they'll play little games about how science changes over time and scientists change their opinions about how it's all working, right? And so science can't be trusted. It's not this absolute truth, whereas creationism is. But at the same time, they don't mind if you point at their viewpoint and say, yours is full of holes too. Because they'll say, well, A, I got faith, and B, if both of our viewpoints are full of holes, then you ought to trust ours. Together. You consider ours just as valid.
Yeah, exactly.
But that is not the issue.
The problem is that intelligent design do not have any scientific evidence whatsoever to support the idea that intelligent design is even a theory. There has never been one single published paper in a peer-reviewed journal anywhere ever of intelligent design. Now, when you come to an intelligent design person, you ask him about this, he's going to tell you, well, scientists are dogmatic and they have control and they don't allow it.
Priesthood.
Yeah, the scientific priesthood and their conspiracy to keep intelligent design out won't let anyone publish. But there's nothing to publish. They haven't submitted anything. Because there's no evidence for this. It's not about evidence. It's about a political ideology.
An average reasonable person who actually cares whether there's evidence or not can determine this by themselves. It's not like, there are these unquestioned scientific authorities to whom we are all required to bow to get their views. It doesn't work that way. You just look at the evidence that's available. It's clear that there is a huge difference between what creationists and intelligent design people can show and what science can show.
Right. Well, religion is all about taking something on the faith of believing in one particular text or one particular person.
Right. So it's not surprising they would assume that about science. Right. Yeah.
By the way, I'd like to plug a website for people who are interested in the intelligent design bullshit. I think a lot of people have already seen talkorigins.org, but recently they have created a companion website called talkdesign.org. And it's got lots of great stuff. Specifically, they talk a lot about the big three, Behe, Dembski, and Johnson. And Vic and I were looking at a very amusing article right before where they were looking at the Discovery Institute's web banners, and they had collected a bunch of old banners that they used to have on their website. The first one is the picture, Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel. It's got God touching Adam, and it's called the Center for Renewal of Science and Culture. And then after that, it's got God is touching some DNA instead of Adam. And then the next one, God is gone. And in the next one, they took out the word renewal because it sounds a little too... And you could just see this evolution of this banner. And then at the end, there's a little comment. It says, there's one more word that's unnecessary in there. Science.
Well, this is all part of that packaging where they're claiming that we're not religion. Intelligent design is not about religion. Remember that debate we went to here in Austin?
Yeah.
And that was one of the things he was saying. This is not about religion. This is about accuracy in science. And presenting all views. No, it's not. And that banner change just clearly goes to show that, yes, they are a religious institute trying to mask their religious feelings and their religious motivations.
And this speaker, if I could just talk for a moment about this guy.
I have a complete review of that on the ACA website under the heading of past events.
Yeah, but for the benefit of our listeners right now, this guy was I can't even hardly say these words. Intelligent design guy was attempting to come up with evidence of intelligent design, and the way he did it was by making up a criteria for the amount of complexity that a thing can have before you have to assume that it's designed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
That's what he did. He made up a criteria and then proceeded to apply the criteria to distinguish between designed things and non-designed things without ever having justified the use of the criteria in the first place. But then he, pointing at things that don't fit pointing at things that do fit his criteria, is he presented those things as if they were evidence. Well, you can't have more than this much complexity unless it's designed, according to my criteria. And here's a thing with more than that much complexity, therefore it's designed. There's my evidence. No. I mean, that is the functional equivalent of saying, well, the proof that I have an invisible, intangible, heatless, fire-breathing dragon in my garage is that if I have a letter in my mailbox, it's proof that, houses that have invisible, intangible, heatless, fire-breathing dragons in their garages are, you can tell them by, there's mail in the mailbox. Yeah. If we check my mailbox and there's mail, then I have the dragon. No, you can't just make up a criteria. That doesn't make the application of the criteria evidence. It doesn't work that way.
Wasn't his criterion something like 40 bits of information?
He had
72 or something like that. It was
some arbitrary number that he pulled out of his ass.
I found a conversation on a message board where Dembski was participating. He's like the grand poobah of the fake complexity theory-based intelligent design.
Yeah.
And when he got backed into a corner at a certain point about, here's something that has more than that many bits and it's not designed, he says, well, the number is arbitrary. At least it won't go over 120 bits. Or something like that.
They'll just simply keep moving it up,
Right. If it passes 120,
pretty freaking complex, and eventually you'll get to the point where they'll dig their heels in and say, no, anything more than this much is designed. Well, how do you know that? They don't know that. They're making up the criteria and just applying it.
Right.
As if that proved something.
Well, back to the Board of Education. The Board of Education, one of the members, Terry Leo, had a strategy session with the Discovery Institute before the hearings. Isn't that convenient? So here's a guy who's supposed to be on the Board of Education to review textbooks, who's getting together with the creationists to figure out how they can worm their intelligent design crap into the stuff prior to even having the hearings.
Wow.
Leaving other people out of it, which is what the hearings are for, to get points of view. Scientists testifying were repeatedly asked scripted questions about alleged weaknesses in the theory of evolution, but intelligent design proponents, in contrast, were lobbed open-ended questions to the extent of their time. And so we have some bias within the board itself.
Oh, absolutely.
So your children in several states surrounding Texas, including Texas, may be reading from textbooks that these people are trying to inject this non-scientific religious nonsense into. And it needs more people to come and say, hey, no, we're not going to take this shit.
And on top of that, it needs people to pay more attention to their local elections, find out who these candidates are,
right. These are
and where they stand
people
on issues of reason, and then vote accordingly.
Yeah.
Religion is worming its way into government in every way that it can, right? We got the Catholic Church trying to order Catholic politicians around. We got elected officials using their own religious bias to decide what our children are going to be taught. We got churches campaigning effectively for those religiously motivated elected officials to get them in there. Here is a news story from across the Atlantic that I think some of our listeners might be interested in. Tony Blair knows it is one of the most delicate of subjects. When asked about it, he squirms and tries to change to a more comfortable line of inquiry. But quietly, the Prime Minister is putting religion at the center of the New Labour project, reflecting his own deeply felt beliefs that answers to most questions can be found in the Bible. Blair is planning to give Christian organizations and other faith groups a central role in policy making in a decisive break with British tradition that religion and government should not mix. Some Number 10 Downing Street officials are concerned that the government will fall victim to unfavorable comparisons with the Republican administration in America, where President Bush makes no secret of his religious faith and right-wing religious organizations have a powerful input into policymaking, particularly on sensitive issues such as abortion. The new high-powered ministerial grouping will have input across government. Although based in the Home Office, it will advise the Departments of Education, Culture, Media, and Sport, Trade, and Industry. Non-religious groups attacked the plans, saying they gave a special platform to religious groups which is denied to others. Keith Wood, Executive Director of the National Secular Society, which includes in its membership a number of Labour MPs, said, "We feel this is a further example of the government's desire to favor and privilege religious organizations and wonder when the opinions and needs of those who are non-religious will be similarly regarded. The non-religious feel alienated and excluded from the political processes that helped shape our society." Boy, that sounds familiar, doesn't it?
It does sound very familiar.
That is exactly what we already have happening in the U.S.,
yes.
And it's reared its ugly head in Britain. Wood said that despite repeated requests, non-religious groups have been excluded from any involvement in the religious working group. So there you go.
Well, they don't have laws about separation of church and state over there. I mean,
they have a tradition of separation of church and state.
Yeah.
I don't know if they have laws, but according to this article, they got a tradition in England.
They have a state-run church.
But it doesn't have
really
a position
anymore
in the government to tell the government what to do.
All right.
Right. It's something the government does itself. Yeah, no, that's weird. I mean, those of us in America can't quite grasp the whole thing. And remember, I did that news story last week about country we were talking about, Denmark. So I'm not sure
I think it was Denmark.
which country, but they have a government-levied tax to support the churches, which you can get out of by simply filing paperwork with the government, telling the government when you left the church. So it's like, it's a tax exemption. Being non-religious is a tax exemption.
Oh, that's a good thing.
So, maybe we should think twice about the possible consequences of mixing church and state in that way.
Yeah, and then we'll let that thought pass.
So,
all right.
What else is going on in government, Vic?
The Bush administration, according to a report, has repeatedly mischaracterized scientific facts to bolster its political agenda in areas ranging from abstinence education to condom use to missile defense. According to according to a 40-page document. Remember last week we were talking about Bush misrepresenting the facts in Iraq. And here we have a report saying he misrepresents facts no matter what he talks about. In a 40-page document titled Politics and Science in the Bush Administration, which was compiled by a minority staff of the House Government Reform Committee of the Special Investigation Division, it says the administration's political interference with science has led to misleading statements by the president, inaccurate responses to Congress, altered websites, suppressed agency reports, erroneous international communications, and a gagging of scientists. This report can be found at www.politicsandscience.org. Several prestigious scientific journals have editorialized about the Bush administration's dealings with science in recent months, including Science, Nature, and the New England Journal of Medicine. An editor at Science, for example, recently said in print that the administration was injecting politics into the arena of science, once immune from this kind of manipulation. According to the purported abuses the document reports on, performance measures used to determine the effectiveness of federally funded abstinence-only sex education programs were altered by the administration in ways that made it easier to say that the programs worked or were effective. And information about how to use condoms, along with scientific data showing that sex education does not lead to earlier and increased sexual activity in young people, was removed from a Center for Disease Control and Prevention website.
Now, do you know the name for this fallacy, Vic?
Leaving shit out?
It's called confirmation bias. There's a good article on it at the Skeptic's Dictionary. Okay. Basically, if you start with a conclusion and you believe that that conclusion is going to be true no matter what, then you tend to believe the evidence that supports your conclusion and ignore the evidence that doesn't support your conclusion. What Bush does is formalize it. Say, this is now our public policy. We're going to officially say that anything that doesn't support things we already want to believe are bad science.
In a testimony before Congress, the Interior Secretary Gail A. Norton omitted and in at least one case misstated federal scientists' findings that Arctic drilling could harm wildlife. The administration altered a National Cancer Institute's website in a way that wrongly implicated or implied that there was good evidence linking abortion to breast cancer. And this came up, they actually got bit in the butt with this one because people objected, saying, no, this is not true. This evidence does not point to that. And they had to remove that. The Bush administration's appointment to key scientific advisory committees, numerous people with political rather than scientific credentials. For example, the appointee to the Presidential AIDS Advisory Committee, marketing consultant Jerry Thacker, has described homosexuality as a death style and referred to AIDS as the gay plague. And he has no qualifications to be on this advisory panel. He's a marketing consultant. You know why they put a marketing consultant on there? Because they're trying to push something.
Right.
And you get a marketing consultant to do
Not
that.
about addressing a problem.
No.
It's about spreading a viewpoint regarding that problem.
Yeah. Again, the Bush administration will stoop to no low.
Yes, they will.
Yes, they will. There's no low they will not stoop to. Let me rephrase that.
To which they will not stoop.
Whatever. To push this political ideology. The abstinence-only programs are a failure, and they don't want to admit that, so they have to misrepresent the evidence in order to say that it's a success.
Right.
And then they misrepresent the evidence supporting realistic sex education to make that sound like it's a failure, when in fact it's not.
Hey, Russell, what are the statistics on the number of people in our chat room right now?
9.
9? That's not 21. We need 21.
I need beer.
When there's 21, we all get beer. I promise.
You're buying?
No, I'm just promising.
Beer will fall out of the sky at that point.
A little ooze from the chat room, maybe.
Though you might want to take into account that we are the non-profits.
Yeah.
We do have 30 listeners right now.
Hey.
So there's no excuse that we don't have 21 people in the chat room. Folks, listening to the show, come on. All you got to do, type in www.atheistnetwork.com, click on the chat link, and bang, there you are. And if there's some, obstacle, if there's some technical problem preventing people from getting into the chat room, we'd really like to know about it. You can send us an email directly at...
radio at atheist-community.org.
Radio at atheist-community.org. Explain to us why you can't simply type in the atheistnetwork.com and join our chat room, you 30 people. Okay, speaking of statistics.
Well, I have a wonderful example of how the Bush administration distorts actual studies. And it has to do with a study on a prison ministry that was released a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah?
The White House, the Wall Street Journal, and conservative Christians have been crowing since June... Crowing since June over news...
They've been crowning since the election.
Crowing since June over news that President George W. Bush's favorite faith-based initiative is a smashing success. When he was governor of Texas, Bush invited Charles Colson's Prison Fellowship to start Interchange Freedom Initiative, a Bible-centered prison within a prison, where inmates undergo vigorous evangelizing, prayer sessions, and intensive counseling. Have you guys ever heard Chuck Colson on the radio?
No.
He does this regular segment where he talks in this very prissy voice. He's a little Rush Limbaugh-ish, but, he's like, oh, part of the problem is that the liberals are taking over the country. Sorry, that was a complete digression.
That's the problem. Now, the problem isn't that Chuck Colson is a Watergate crook. The problem is that liberals are taking over the country.
Right, and teaching evolution.
I gotcha.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so there was a study where they said that their rate of recidivism was extremely good for people who have graduated from this program. Recidivism means that people, when they are released from jail, they don't go back to jail, or they don't go back as quickly, or something like that. And it says, you don't have to believe in faith healing to think that an intensive 16-month program with post-release follow-up run by deeply caring people might be the occasion for some inmates to turn their lives around. The report seemed to present liberal secularists with an unpleasant choice. Would you rather have people saved by Colson, or would you rather have them commit more crimes and go back to prison? But things are not always as they seem. When you look carefully at the Penn study, it's clear that the program didn't work. The interchange participants did somewhat worse than the controls. They were slightly more likely to be rearrested and noticeably more likely, 24% versus 20%, to be reimprisoned. If faith is, as Paul told the Hebrews, the evidence of things not seen, then interchange is an opportunity to cultivate faith. We certainly haven't seen any results. Let me tell you what happened. What they did was that they claimed in their study that anybody who graduates the program has a much better have much better success staying out of prison in the future. But their requirements for who has graduated and who has not are somewhat strict. One of the things is that if they don't get a job once they're out of prison, then they're not considered a graduate.
Right, and it's having a job that puts money in people's pockets, keeps them busy, keeps them off the streets, right, and keeps them from committing crimes.
It's quite simple. Ignore the prison ministry completely. Say that you only took a sample of all the people who went out and got jobs versus all the people who didn't.
Right. And then you
of course those people have a much better rate of staying out of prison. But when you put everyone in there, when you put everyone in the study together... And
everybody who took the program.
Right, everybody who actually signed up for the program. Well, and even the ones who dropped out, didn't actually finish the program, they do worse. Now, you could argue, as I'm sure Chuck Colson does, that, hey, it's not fair to blame us for people who joined and then dropped out, except that this means that if they didn't if they didn't do their program at all, then fewer people would have gone back to jail.
Right.
You can't just count a program's successes based on the success of a very narrowly defined group. You have to look at all the statistics.
Mm-hmm. Typical.
Very typical.
Now, but...
That's kind of like the psychics where they prove that they have...
Actually...
Now, this wasn't the Bush administration... Oh, I'm sorry, yeah.
The way they prove they have psychic ability is to tell you all the people who they predicted stuff on, but ignore the vast amount of people who they tried to predict stuff on and wasn't right.
Confirmation...
And lie about the few
that they claim.
Confirmation bias. Now, I just thought about what I just said, and I realized that's not necessarily true that their ministry was automatically a bad thing. It could be that the kind of people who are inclined to sign up for the program in the first place tend to be worse people.
However, there are other statistics which clearly show that atheists are underrepresented in federal prison populations.
Right.
Yeah, we don't go to jail because we're not stupid.
I'm not going to say that this proves that being an atheist makes you more law-abiding and being a Christian makes you less law-abiding.
No.
I'm not going to claim that. But I certainly will claim that this evidence disproves the common Christian assertion that if you are not a Christian, you will be more inclined to criminal behavior.
Yeah.
But now the whole Colson prison ministry thing, who cooked those statistics? Was that the Colson's prison ministry itself, or is that
as far as I can tell, the prison ministry...
They did their own cooking?
I think it was the prison ministry that did their own cooking.
Okay.
And the soup was foul.
But, on the other hand, this is George Bush's favorite faith-based initiative.
Ah, yeah.
Right.
His favorite.
He's tacitly endorsing it.
So, that's interesting. But
this is called Interchange, their website. You can search for that and
okay.
Anyway.
Now, something else you found that is sort of a follow-up to previous things we talked about on the show, right?
This kind of got overlooked.
Also related to the Bush administration.
Bush did a press conference a few weeks ago, which we talked about extensively on our last show, because remember, that was the press conference where he said, well, gay people, they're not bad people. We're all sinners, but they have to stop being gay.
They're not bad. We're all sinners.
And that was so comical that, it was hard to notice that there were some other incredibly insane things that he said in that press conference.
The word games that theists, I won't just even limit it to Christians, the word games that theists will engage in order to be judgmental while pretending that they're not.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Oh, it's not me that hates homosexuality, it's God.
And I just like God, so...
Oh, I'm not judging you, because you're homosexual. We're all sinners. Well, why are you bringing up the homosexuality then, unless you're calling it evil?
Yeah, tell us why we should give a damn about your opinions on homosexuality.
Right. Exactly. But what else did he say in that speech? Something
else funny. This was on July 30th, the press conference. A reporter asked him about the bad economy. He said, you've signed into law a bunch of tax cuts, and 2 of them have had plenty of time to take effect, and the 3rd one is taking effect now, doesn't seem to be working, the economy's still pretty bad, do you think you're taking the wrong approach? The president said... No, to answer the last part of your question, first of all, just a quick history, recent history. The stock market started to decline in March of 2000, then the first quarter of 2001 was a recession, and then we got attacked in 9/11, and then corporate scandals started to bubble up to the surface, which created a lack of confidence in the system. And then we had this drumbeat to war. Remember on our TV screens? Well, I'm not suggesting which network did this, but it said, March to war, every day from last summer until the spring. March to war, march to war. That's not a very conducive environment for people to take risk when they hear march to war all the time.
George Bush is blaming this whole drumbeat to war on the media?
Yeah. Can you imagine?
Well, be fair to him. He only watches Fox News, after all.
So it's Fox he's talking about.
No, I don't know.
But hey, I mean, what gave the media the idea?
I can't imagine.
Well,
Gee, I wonder, who came out and said, we just gotta go attack those little brown people across the sea?
yeah, I mean, to hear Bush talk, he's like, I'm just the president. I can't stand up to when the media starts saying we're going to war all the time. I had to do it. Bush,
yeah, right.
you know,
Like Bush was so hesitant to go to war. He was so hesitant that he was announcing that we weren't going to pay any attention to what the United Nations decided before the United Nations ever even got around to taking a vote.
this
He was
should
so hesitant that he didn't send our troops across the ocean without, on his own say-so. He was so hesitant that he didn't accept it when the Congress decided that it was going to be up to him to decide whether we're going to war or not. No. He said no. No, we're not sending our boys over there. I'm not going to unilaterally decide who our enemies are and who we ought to attack. And I'm not going to blame them. And I'm not going to lie and make up a bunch of bullshit about, claims of evidence to justify our attack. No, I'm not going to do any of those things. Or at least I wouldn't if it wasn't for that darn media.
This should prove to people once and for all that Bush isn't merely dumb. He's living in his own entire parallel universe.
Maybe they have more than one of him. Maybe this was like, the level-headed liberal one.
Have you noticed any Bushes with goatees running around lately?
There was a picture. It's either in Maxim or Stuff. I can't remember. But they had Bush dressed up in a nice black suit with a goatee and a mustache and horns and big red eyes. it was really funny.
What an idiot. No, it's not the media. The media jumped on the bandwagon. But whose bandwagon? That would be President Bush's bandwagon.
Yeah. Oh, my man.
How dare he now try to claim that the damage that the war may have done to our economy is because of the media and not because he dragged us into this fucking stupid war in the first place.
This is a good sign, though. It means the war is now so unpopular that Bush is desperate to distance himself from it.
Oh, but
well, God told him to go to war, so why doesn't he point to, the economy? Yeah, you're right. We had we had a recession, and then we were attacked, and then there were the corporate scandals, and then God got into it and started telling us we had to go to war, and so it's God's fault.
But
stop channeling Pat Robertson.
You better all stop giving your money to churches and invest it in our economy to get us back up on our feet because God is just screwing us over. I want to hear him say that.
Bush's chicken hawk middle class support base don't see any of this. They're bury their heads in the sand and take it up to corporate ass followers of Bush, who you tell them, they look at all that stuff. Bush lied about this. I was talking to one the other day. I'm pointing out the fact that Bush misrepresented evidence about Iraq, and here's the evidence. They already knew that this was fake. So he's like, well, no, we still had to go into Iraq. It was a good thing we did that. It doesn't matter.
Let me guess, to liberate the poor Iraqi people.
Saddam had to go. Now they don't care about the Iraqi people. Saddam had to go.
I have every sympathy for the people of Iraq, right? Every sympathy for them. But this whole cowboy thing that the United States goes out. It used to be. If you notice how this has grown, it used to be, like Cuba, right? Cuba on our doorstep went communist, and then we claimed self-defense, right? We're gonna stick it to those Cubans out of self-defense to protect our democracy. Well, that's almost arguable. That is on our doorstep, right? That is right across a short stretch of water from Florida. There were Soviet missiles on ships on their way to Cuba.
Kind of like if you're playing Risk, you want to conquer the nearby countries just to make sure that...
How did we get from that to any nation on the planet that isn't a democracy is therefore automatically bad, and it is up to us to go and conquer them and make them a democracy.
And I think this is
how the hell did we get there?
Saddam Hussein was bad, but that's not the point.
The Bush administration...
But there's nothing about those people are not our problem. They're not.
Right.
And I think the world community can decide that that's a problem the world needs to deal with. But the way that that's done is through the UN.
Here's one thing that I think conservatives and the Bush administration have a fundamental misunderstanding of Middle Eastern culture. I mean, because you go over there and try and present democracy, these people aren't really going to accept Western cultural ways or just say, oh yeah, okay, we'll take on your ways right now. No, they just don't understand how these people think. And that's why you have people who are glad that Saddam is... there was a thing on NPR where they interviewed Iraqis who are glad that Saddam's gone, but they hate the American occupation and support the rebels and the guerrilla fighters who are killing soldiers on a daily basis. And they even made claims that, yes, we're not actually participating in these attacks, but, you know, if one of the guerrilla militants came to our door and needed shelter, we'd give it to him.
Well, I think it is clear that the Bush administration does not understand the people in that part of the world. But that's an argument against whether or not this invasion, this invasion is going to achieve its goal.
Right.
It doesn't address whether we ought to have gone in there in the first place. And to me, that's the thing that drives me completely up the wall. We had no justification going in there. We are not the world's daddy. Now, if there's wars, that's different. Because, but frankly, it's only different because when there's wars, it's more likely that other nations will join in. The first Iraq war, when Iraq invaded Kuwait, right, and we got involved in shutting that down and undoing the damage, I didn't have an objection to that.
Nope.
It was clear that war was going on, that it was unjustified, and we were not the lone cowboy out there enforcing our opinions on the rest of the world.
And when we pulled out, leaving the Kurds to believe that we would support an uprising against Saddam, and then when they did, we just said, oh, that's your problem, not ours, and they all got killed. And that didn't make us look too good in the eyes of the Iraqi people either.
Well, the thing is that we didn't handle that situation right. But the fact that we went in there, Yugoslavia, right, all those were justified things. Mm-hmm. Bad as they turned out, as mismanaged as they may have been, as much unnecessary, avoidable civilian casualties as there may have been, at least there was a justification for being there. There was no justification for going into Iraq. Just because Saddam Hussein is a prick does not mean that we're automatically entitled to pick up our weapons and go over there and beat him up.
NewAmericanCentury.org. Anyway, the thing is, though, I mean, having a bad person over there is not justification for war, unless you can make the case that your going in there will make things better.
No, even then it's not. Who the fuck put us in charge of going into other people's countries to make them better from our perspective?
That's the United Nations.
That is not our job. It is not our fucking job, ever. Never has been.
That too.
Now, if we can get a consensus of other nations to agree that there is a problem, that something ought to be done, then I think we have every right to be part of that.
Right.
If we want to cheerlead for that and try to build that consensus, I think that's perfectly appropriate.
Sure,
right?
I agree with that.
That is how we should express our opinions to the world community.
We should not have acted unilaterally, no question.
Not by shipping our tanks over there.
But my point is that by going over there, most Iraqis now are worse off than they were under Saddam Hussein.
That again is an argument against doing it on the basis of the consequences.
Plus, we are spending $4 billion a month to pay for this war.
And they've already set
I don't want to.
And that's also an argument against it on the basis of what the consequences were.
Right.
Really, the issue is, should we have done it in the first place? That is the issue.
Right.
No. Because these other things we got involved in, right? The first Iraq war, we should have probably gone all the way into Baghdad and and stop the entire thing. Could have done it then, would have been justified then, didn't do it then, right? I mean, at Yugoslavia, some extremely horrendous incidents of civilian deaths because of misfired weapons and stuff, or
Actually, I've seen a surprisingly good discussion with George Bush Sr. about why he didn't go after Saddam Hussein at the time.
All right. So the point is, with any war, there's going to be bad unintended consequences or mismanagement, even if it was justified. So I really don't want us to get sidetracked on the bad unintended consequences. The issue is, should we have gone in there in the first place? And the answer is no.
Darn that liberal media for making us vote for it.
Huh? That's us, folks. We are liberal media. Speaking of which, what's our score now? Scroll up a bit, can't you? No?
10.
10 is also not 21. We need to get to 21 today, folks. 21 listeners in the chat room. That's www.
How do you spell that?
www.atheistnetwork.com. Click on the chat link. When we get to 21, we win a big prize.
Hey, wait. It was beer a minute ago.
That's a big prize.
Okay. I just want the prize to change because,
Yeah.
I'm going to want a beer here pretty soon.
Are you?
Yeah.
Maybe after the show. If we get to 21. If we don't get to 21, you cannot have a beer.
Just screw that.
And neither can they. Those of you listening at home, you may not have a beer unless you join our chat room right now.
Okay. What's next?
We've tried not caring. I'm going to try pressure tactics.
Oh, okay.
We get a bunch of people in the chat room.
Something. The fundamentalists will take over our country if there aren't 21 people.
That's right.
There'll be a fundamentalist invasion of Russell's law.
I learned tactics from the Texas Freedom Network.
So we were talking liberal media, right? And after all this bullshit goes on, the right-wing fundamentalist Christians in this country have the gall to claim that all of our problems are the result of liberals having their say, like we're having now.
That's the bottom line of all conservative media, particularly on the radio. Liberals suck, liberals suck, liberals suck. If they would just go away, everything would be better. This is what you hear from them. Do you remember Ann Coulter? Her BS about that liberals were traitors and that anybody didn't support the war.
That is still her BS.
We should go into their countries and bomb them and take them over and convert them all to Christianity. And although some conservatives...
Well, that was Muslims. Well, you get your targets right.
That's fine. That's fine, but Ann Coulter is evil.
Ann Coulter is evil.
And she's popular amongst conservatives.
But conservatives are not just saying that liberals are bad and the cause of all our nation's problems and trying to get us to shut up. They're willing to do something about it, aren't they, Russell?
Yeah.
So what are they doing?
Are we talking about Roy Moore now?
No. Bush blames media.
But we just did that.
I'm sorry. Bush muffles left. That's
me. I thought we were getting
story.
Do you want me to read that quote again? Because it's hilarious.
That's all right.
Hilarious. Well, it appears that the Bush administration is actively seeking to gag or punish social service organizations that challenge the party line on such matters as health care for the poor children and HIV prevention. According to a new report, nonprofits that disagree with the president's own solutions or go further and blame him for problems in the first place have come to expect unpleasant consequences. Those might include audits of federal fund spending and reviews of content such as workshop literature. If you disagree with the administration on ideological grounds, they're going to come down on you with a hammer. This has huge implications for free flow of speech in this country, says Gary Bass, the executive director of OMB Watch, itself a nonprofit, which released the report last Wednesday as part of its 20-year mission to monitor the White House budget and spending decisions. Since nonprofits operate on a tax-exempt basis and often receive government funding, they have always been subject to federal oversight and are forbidden from engaging in electoral politics. Under George W. Bush, however, oversight has quietly morphed into ideological motivation, intimidation, and censorship, according to the OME Watch's report, some dozen specific conflicts. Even though causes on the right have their own tax-exempt advocates, conservatives have long reviled nonprofits in general for supporting the welfare state. The selective, stealthy approach of today's.
We're the nonprofits.
Yeah. Okay.
Arr. Sorry.
All right. The selective.
We didn't do it.
The approach is unprecedented, he says. His organization has wanted to put out an alert for some months, but piecing together the scattered developments took time. Almost every example we have here, there is a link to the Bush administration directly, not just ideologically.
Wow.
Yeah, it's interesting but brief mention. OM Watch reveals that groups currently applying for federal grants to provide humanitarian relief to Iraq are required to advertise the U.S. government's generosity. Proof that this new scrutiny of nonprofits is political and not just about careful accounting. When places like the Health and Human Services was given orders to take down something off their website, wasn't it? I'm missing that part. I highlighted something different. Anyway, also an AIDS group in California had used some language that the Bush administration did not approve of and had their funding audited twice. It seems they pick on liberal nonprofit groups while conservative nonprofit groups get carte blanche.
You want to hear something that will make your irony meters go completely nuts?
Yeah, go ahead.
Possibly short out.
This
is the same administration that is bending over backwards to cram federal funds down the throats of faith-based.
Oh, I'm getting to that.
Social services.
Yeah.
And one of the things that they're doing in the course of cramming that money down the throats of faith-based social service groups is they're trying to eliminate the necessity for oversight of those groups. In fact, they've argued that less oversight is necessary when it's Christian groups because, you can just trust them. Where the hell is all the oversight coming from that is detecting all these things that the Bush administration doesn't approve of? They must have a small army of people going around examining all of these nonprofit organizations receiving federal funds to find which ones are doing things that the Bush administration doesn't approve of so that they can punish them. And yet, at the same time, they're trying to take away oversight from groups who are clearly capable of doing shit like covering up centuries of childhood pedophilia, child pedophilia. It's all child pedophilia, is it?
Well, there's pedophilia and pedophilia
by you're getting me sidetracked.
These are distinctions no one would have ever heard of.
But the Catholic Church, great example of a great big giant theistic organization, was capable of covering up centuries of child sexual abuse by its own people.
Yeah.
And yet, they are the ones who, people like them are the ones who, according to the Bush administration, are supposed to not need any oversight.
No.
While instead, an apparent small army of undercover detectives is going around, and that's a euphemism, folks. I don't know that it's undercover detectives, but people going around examining organizations receiving federal funds to see if they can catch them doing something Shrub doesn't like.
Well, yeah,
so that they can be punished for it.
Find a way to stop the federal funding from people who are opposed to Bush's policies,
right,
or have policies of their nonprofit groups that are opposed to the conservative ideology.
So they're not only
most squarely in the administration's sight, according to the report, are groups that deal progressively and explicitly with sex education. One of them, Stop AIDS, is a San Francisco-based nonprofit that has used streetwise language to promote HIV prevention among gay and bisexual men since 1984. Since Bush took office, it has been audited twice by Health and Human Services and forced to submit programs material for review by the Health and Human Services Subsidiary Center for Disease Control and Prevention. Proof that this new scrutiny of nonprofits is political and not just about careful accounting shows in the probes that the works probes of work that groups do with money that is from non-federal sources. They're investigating their non-federal money as well.
Whoa.
Ah.
Oh, sure, because they might be backed by terrorists.
Yeah.
Terrorists want our children to use condoms. Hey, that looks like a lot of people. What's our score now?
12.
12 is well past the halfway point.
Oh, I wouldn't say well.
That beer is looking more and more likely. We still got half an hour. 15 minutes of show.
15.
15 minutes of show?
All right.
You still get in there.
Folks.
Everybody, come on. www.atheistnetwork.com. Click on the chat link. Join the chat room. It'll be fun. Yeah, but so this is, I mean, it was bad enough when they were trying to spread this line that we need faith-based organizations conducting our social services with federal funding because they'll be more trustworthy, right? We won't need as much oversight. Well, they're not having less oversight, are they? They're just using their oversight. They're turning it off of the faith-based groups and onto the liberal and progressive groups to try to drum them out of business. Unbelievable.
Now, this is from the conclusion of the actual report paragraph. The Bush administration and some conservatives appear to be moving towards closing off debate on important issues from the structure of the social safety net involving programs like Head Start and education for disabled children to health and safety regulation, impacting how scientific research and knowledge is used by the government. Going a step further, the administration is attempting to extend its control of speech and activities to privately funded programs and communications, including AIDS education groups and humanitarian aid relief efforts in Iraq.
Yep.
It is a conservative takeover, just like redistricting in Texas is nothing more than a conservative, hostile takeover.
Hey, we didn't mention how we all went to that rally, but...
Oh, yeah.
We didn't. We went to a rally on the south steps of the capital of Texas to protest the right-wing fascists' attempted redistricting of Texas so that they'll get more votes next year.
Yeah, we can't win.
It's completely evil. We went down there, and there were a couple of thousand people there, and we signed petitions and stuff.
I got pictures, but my computer's on the blink, and I can't get them out, so...
Russell, it's your turn with Roy Moore. Speaking of attempted takeovers of our government.
Yeah, big shocker. They told Roy Moore to take the monument down again. He's not gonna. Saying, I have no intention of removing the monument. This I cannot and will not do.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, well, probably because it's 2 tons.
Right, he's not that strong.
I'm not asking you to do it personally, moron. So, if you want to stand there with a hacksaw and
remember,
pieces off of it,
he snuck this thing in there in the middle of the night.
Well,
he knew he was doing wrong
illegally,
when he did it.
Helped a TV evangelist make money on it.
Yes, they all know that.
Completely sick.
U.S. District Judge Myron Thompson of Montgomery said fines of about $5,000 a day could be imposed against the state if the monument were not removed.
Right.
Now, what I would like to see is $5,000 a day be levied against Roy Moore's personal bank account.
Well, interestingly, I have a follow-up to this. Shall I go now? Russell, or have you got more?
No, well, go ahead.
Okay, so this is a slightly later story. Chief Justice Roy Moore took his case to keep the Ten Commandments monument in the Alabama Judiciary Building to the U.S. Supreme Court on Friday as busloads of supporters headed for a rally Saturday at the state capitol to pray for his cause. They're like there now.
Oh.
This is today.
Uh-huh.
There's the big rally today. And unfortunately, CNN is all full of the blackout in New York, and they're not covering this. Well, either unfortunately or fortunately, depending on how you look at it. Moore and his attorneys said they were asking the Supreme Court to nullify U.S. District Judge Myron Thompson's order to remove the 5,300-pound monument from the Judiciary Building. Rick Scarborough of Vision America, a national organization of churches, said he knows of buses bringing people to the rally from Wisconsin, Colorado, and other states. Dozens of protesters were already in Montgomery on Friday, and many stopped to see the monument, some pausing to have a picture taken. Scarborough said the rally is about more than whether or not Moore can keep the Ten Commandments monument in the judicial building. Quote, "This is a decisive battle in a 40-year culture war against our faith. It's about a militant minority stripping vestiges of our faith from the public square." Does anybody ever bother to ask these idiots how it is that this militant minority is winning?
Next time I see one, I'll ask them.
They're winning because the Ten Commandments monuments are a violation of the Constitution. That's why it's possible for a small minority to win, even though most people in the nation think it's just fine and dandy for us to have those things there. The Constitution is the final arbiter of law, and the Constitution says these monuments are way out of line.
Actually, Roy Moore said something like, let's see, I intend to uphold my oath to the Constitution of the United States as well as the Constitution of the State of Alabama. I have maintained the rule of law. I have been true to the oath of my office. I can do no more, and I will do no less, so help me God.
Okay, so now he's a liar as well as a scumbag.
Yep.
Another Christian group, the Christian Defense Coalition, is planning a 24-hour protest beginning at 12:01 a.m. on Wednesday, the day of the deadline. The organization's director, Patrick Mahoney, said protesters would kneel and pray around the building and would enter in small numbers and pray in front of the monument during hours when the building is open. So these are people going into a state judicial building to go down on their knees and pray in the state judicial building. If there was ever a clear sign that this is an unwelcome intrusion of religion into our government, that ought to be it.
Yeah.
Judicial Building Marshal Willie James issued guidelines Friday saying the protesters would be allowed inside the rotunda in small numbers, but would be asked to leave if they caused a disturbance. I am very interested in seeing how this plays out. I want to see how far they're going to go.
Was there somebody planning to go in there and wheel that thing out today?
No, Wednesday is the deadline for getting it out.
Okay,
so if Moore doesn't take it out by Wednesday, I don't know what happens. Clearly the fines begin.
Yeah.
And I don't know what... I don't know what's going to happen.
Wasn't it Manda last week who said, somebody should just go in with a sledgehammer and help them?
May have been.
Because, destroying public property, it's already there illegally.
By the way, shortly after Moore announced he would defy the federal court order, Moore's colleagues on the Alabama Supreme Court met privately to discuss whether they can invoke a state law that lets a majority of the 9 justices overrule an administrative action by the Chief Justice. They haven't taken any action yet, but his colleagues, if they want, can say, well, Moore says that it won't be taken out, but it will be.
Yeah. And
that's also interesting. That, to me, seems like the peaceful resolution that we need.
There's another Christian group, Jay Sekula's group. Anybody remember him? The guy from the Center for Law, or American Center for Law and Justice, ACLJ. Which does all these religious cases, and ordinarily he'd be all over this kind of thing. Even he says that Roy Moore is doing the completely wrong thing in this case.
We're down to like 5 minutes now.
Yeah.
And we have way more news to go, so let's try to truncate these remaining stories as much as we can. Russell, you've got the breastfeeding woman driver.
Driver who nursed infant found innocent. There was a woman belonging to an obscure religious sect. She was found innocent on Friday of child endangerment charges for breastfeeding her baby while driving, but she was convicted of 3 lesser charges.
Yeah.
She wouldn't pull over. She was found guilty of violating child restraint laws, driving without a valid driver's license, and fleeing the police.
Uh-huh.
So the reason she wouldn't pull over was because her religious sect says that she needs her husband's opinion to take any action, including, honey, can I pull over? There's a nice police car behind me.
Any action?
Well,
I mean, that's insane, right? I mean, breathe in, honey. Breathe out, honey. Press the accelerator, honey.
Catherine Nicole Donkers, 29, represented herself and her husband...
Bonkers?
Donkers.
Oh, Donkers.
And her husband, Bradley Barnhill.
I thought bonkers.
Their religion
for obvious reasons.
says that Barnhill has to be responsible for punishing Donkers. Donkers said she did nothing wrong and was following her husband's orders when she drove alone with the baby from Pennsylvania to Michigan. I mean, as the father of a baby, you can't just hold the kid in your lap, even if you're not breastfeeding and taking your hands off the wheel, because any minor accident you get in could kill the kid.
Speaking of religious craziness, Michigan church burns Bible.
Oh, my goodness.
A church in Greenville, Michigan, thinks that the Harry Potter books are part of an evil cult. So church leaders decided to have an old-fashioned book burning. But children's books were not the only things that went into the fire. They have changed in it the key points of the Bible, said Bishop Tom Turner, Sr. of Jesus Non-Denominational Church in Greenville. The majority of it's probably the same, but it takes just a little bit to mislead people. So, the Book of Mormon, versions of the Bible, and even Catholic rosaries all went up in flames. Church leaders say any Bible besides the King James Version that they use are distractions.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Then when you have a book that's distracting you, you burn it.
So they burned the Bible too.
Yeah, they burned versions of it, right?
Cool.
They interviewed Dr. Bastian Van Elderen, who studies religion at Calvin College since the 1940s. He has never seen anything like this here. Quote, I've heard a lot of harangues about different viewpoints, but nothing of this caliber. Dr. Van Elderen says the last time he remembers burning Bibles was in the South in the 1950s. Russell, more religious craziness, please.
Okay.
Time?
I got it. The only ones I have left are sad.
Oh, let's skip the sad ones.
Okay.
How about some pedophilia?
Oh, yeah, that's very happy.
Yeah.
Well, we have our duty, and we've made it our business on this show to cover the reports of priestly pedophilia. I have one that goes outside the Catholic Church. A St. Clair County minister who allegedly persuaded a 16-year-old to strip down to his underwear told police his intent was to discourage the boy from having premarital sex.
By stripping down to his underwear.
The teen's parents contacted state police after he told them about the encounter with the minister at the church in Port Huron Township. The minister told investigators he was designing a program to discourage teens from having premarital sex when he brought the teenager to the church July 22. After each question the minister asked the boy about premarital sex, he allegedly asked him to remove an item of clothing. The boy eventually stripped to his underwear, but refused to take his underwear off, and also refused the minister's request to take pictures of him.
Because you need those two.
It's all part of the program, son.
Yeah, okay. All right.
The clergyman told police he intended to embarrass the teens while they were naked, so they would remember that embarrassment and refrain from sex if they were naked with a girl. That's healthy, if it's true, which, of course, I don't believe for a second.
No. Kind of maybe the pictures was a thing that maybe you not believe it was for the purposes of trying to keep from having premarital sex.
Barr said the minister this is Stephanie Barr, state trooper, said the minister has resigned his post at the church. The president of the congregation declined to comment. But, of course, that doesn't really say what church this is, but it's not the Catholic Church, who are, the major perpetrators here. And Nick, you got some news.
Yep, I remember. I think I said last episode that there was a document out that showed that the Catholic Church was covering up sex crimes for over 40 years. And a CBS News correspondent named Vince Gonzalez has got a hold of this document. It's a confidential Vatican document that lays out the church policy that calls for absolute secrecy when it comes to sexual abuse by priests. Anyone who speaks out could be thrown out of the church. Policy was written in 1962 by Cardinal Alfredo Viani, I think it is. I don't speak Italian, so. The document, once stored in the secret archives of the Vatican, focuses on crimes initiated as part of the confessional relationship and what it calls the worst crimes, sexual assault committed by priests or attempted by him with youths of either sex or with brute animals.
Whoa! Yeah, the document covered animals?
Covers animals. It's just.
I wonder why they felt it was necessary to cover sex with animals by priests.
This stuff gets creepier and creepier. Every time we talk about it, it's just a little creepier. Bishops are instructed.
You can top that.
Bishops are instructed to pursue these cases in the most secretive way, restrained by a perpetual silence, and everyone, including the alleged victim, is to observe the strictest secret, which is commonly regarded as the secret of the Holy Office. under the penalty of excommunication. Remember, you're the victim.
Whoa!
If you're the victim and you talk about this, you can be excommunicated from the church, which is basically saying...
Well, that'd be doing you a favor.
Yeah, but basically, if you're a believer, that's telling you that we're condemning you straight to hell for being a victim and talking about it.
Yeah. Amazing, huh?
Yeah, well, of course, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops has said this is taken way out of context.
Oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah,
No,
sure it is.
We didn't mean anything. We didn't really need to have that document. That was just, we were just, pondering, what if we did have priests having sex with animals? We needed a policy.
A lawyer who represents...
Hypothetically, I'm just saying.
A lawyer who represents the alleged victims said that this document is significant because it's the blueprint for deception. It also proves that what he's been alleging on behalf of the victims in the priest abuse lawsuits, that the church is engaged in a crime, namely racketeering.
That frickin' organization needs to be completely put out of business. It's evil through and through. Thanks, everybody, for joining us here today on this fine Saturday in, when was it? August? And I want to especially thank those of you who were able to find it in your hearts to join our little chat room. We got up to 12 as far as I know. I don't think we quite have 12 anymore. And all the rest of you who are not able to make it, I'm sure you have very serious, technical reasons, or you're at work and you don't have liberty to go to just whatever website you want or whatever. I'm sure you have darn good reasons, which you explain to us in your emails. I'm just kidding, but it makes our hearts glad to see a lot of people actually paying attention. Thank you once again. Is it time to go?
We got 30 seconds.
30 seconds.
Yeah.
No, we'll see you in 2 weeks, right?
Right.
Yeah.
That would be on today's the 16th, so that'd be the 30th?
30th.
The 30th. And we will leave you with XTC singing Jumping in Gomorrah, I'm Religion Free. Bye, folks.
Bye.